I wish I knew how to quit you.
Then why don't you?
This is Codependent Content, a podcast where my partner and I discuss the TV shows, movies, and video games in which we've formed an unhealthy relationship. My name is Mattias, and my co-host is Shannon Riley. Join us each week as we try to make sense of the media we continually give our hearts against our better judgment, and commiserate with us as we struggle and fail to let go of the characters, stories, and worlds that we are entangled with. Because just when we think we're done with content, it draws us back in. Happy Super Bowl day, everyone. Go
Birds.
Go whatever team
Go Birds.
won. Because at this point we're recording and we don't know who won at this point, right?
Right now it's fourth quarter and it's tied 35-35.
Wow. You let us know what happens because we're not paying attention to that. We are clearly here recording a podcast on the day we should have watched
Rihanna slay.
I was going to talk about where we should have watched the episode of The Last of Us, but because it came out 2 days early.
Oh.
But
I'm just distracted by Rihanna. I heard her performance is really good. I can't wait to watch it.
On YouTube, leaked YouTube and TikTok clips. When this is over. But yeah, we're not watching football. But we are talking about The Last of Us this week. It's episode 5. Shannon, did you see get any thoughts or feedback from last week that you wanted to go over?
I did not get any feedback from last week, except that apparently Dunkin' Donuts baristas and Starbucks baristas have a blood feud. So.
Right. Sure. That's always been true.
Well.
In the new world, it'll be the Bucks versus the Dunks.
The what?
And you need to choose a side now because that's where we're going. I'm sorry, we're both a little tired. I just got back from Oakland where I took a work trip where I had to watch this week's episode in the comfort of my hotel room on a shitty TV, while Shannon here got to watch it on our amazing sound system and home theater setup with the big screen projector. And you can tell I'm not jealous at all. And I'm not worried about it.
I'm not mad that I had to watch it without you at all. I wasn't texting you immediately trying to get you to watch it sooner so we could talk about it at all. I missed you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I missed my home theater system. So
we're breaking up. This is the end of the podcast.
This is why it's called Codependent Content.
This is it. It's over. Thanks for joining us for our first 4 episodes. We're done.
Don't confront me on the podcast. Try and put me on the spot. Force me to love you. That's not fair.
Oh, God. Bill.
Yeah. Well, we didn't get much feedback, but I know that people are still enjoying it. And people are still watching, which is great because I felt like we did. I talked way too much last podcast. But
you just had a lot to say,
and it was a rough week. I mean, looking back on the episode in regards to this episode, I'm kind of a little disappointed in the last episode in terms of like The Last of Us, right? Episode 4, while interesting, just kind of felt like a little layover at the end of the day. I don't know how you felt about it. Like after this.
Yeah, it felt, if I could have my way, I would have smushed 4 and 5 together and maybe spent less time setting the table in episode 4 and more time with Henry, Sam, Joel, and Ellie.
Yeah, for sure.
I
feel like we needed a lot more of Henry and Sam in this last episode and not just here. And then also, as much as I loved Melanie Linsky's performance last week and this week, I don't know that the payoff exactly works in the way that I expected,
What do you mean?
We'll get to it, but I just don't think that like the payoff in terms of like what her arc was and how she met her end was all that compelling to me at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And when you know what's going to happen in this episode, and how the episode is going to end, you kind of like just want to be like, okay, we don't care about this. Like, you were
Right.
great, Melanie, but like we're not here for
I'm not here
this,
for her anymore, yeah.
like, and so it's all kind of made up plot. Like, this is again very different from how the game did it, in that Henry, well, he didn't have like a rival or someone chasing after him in a sense,
Right.
They were all stuck in Pittsburgh and just needing to get through the city for one reason or another. There was only one way to this radio tower where Henry can meet up with his crew, whoever those people were, because we never meet them. And then they're dealing with this resistance. The resistance is very much the same. We just don't have any characters to, like, I guess, ground us,
Yeah.
or that we get to know in terms of the resistance. They're just an obstacle,
Right.
And the biggest thing is the truck that is your
The run plow.
major antagonist throughout the entire sequences, So in the sense, this is all made up and new for the Kathleen, Perry, all that stuff is fairly new. And I love the world building. I love it. But I'm not sure that it really impacted me in, say, the way that the deviation with Bill and Frank, impacts you.
Sure.
Because you get a whole arc and a whole story. Whereas, like, I feel like if you're gonna give us something with Kathleen and Henry, like, make that thing kind of, I don't know, have a payoff either for Henry or for Kathleen or for us
Right.
wanting to, like, see how this plays out. And it
Mhm.
just kind of, like, it plays out as you
Yeah.
kind of expect. And then
I wasn't super
You know.
invested in Kathleen's story.
Mhm.
And that's not at all because of Melanie Lynskey.
Yeah.
I would argue that Melanie Lynskey made me more curious about Kathleen's story with her just authenticity and performance. But if the idea is that having that like revenge plot with Kathleen kind of gives us a little more meat to Henry's situation,
Mhm.
I would argue that you could probably dehumanize Kathleen as like a central character in these two episodes and just vote like Henry and Sam could have been in that situation for any other reason, and the Henry Sam payoff still would have hit me regardless of Kathleen. So I feel like she didn't really add anything. Again, not Melanie Lynskey. Melanie Lynskey, we love you, but Kathleen didn't really add anything to the story for me.
Right. So, again, if you're new to the podcast, if you're new here and you haven't listened to this before, we are going to talk about the episode as is. We're going to bring in our knowledge from the game. So we will be, from the very beginning, spoiling anything in regards to this episode. We will
Great.
try not to spoil anything in regards to future episodes, even though we have both played the games, and we will save a section for the end when we talk about what we are expecting next episode and beyond, what we're excited for, things like that, for like a full spoiler section, and kind of maybe talk more about like how things play in to things from the video game.
Great.
But this week, again, we're just talking about episode 5, Endure and Survive. And so we're talking here, we've already mentioned Kathleen as the leader of the resistance. And I will say, to segue into the beginning of this, we are kind of in a little flashback. We jump into, I was about to say Pittsburgh, but it's not Pittsburgh anymore. We jump into Kansas City as the revolution happened. Supposedly 10 or 11 days ago, before
Joel and
episode
Ellie
4,
arrive.
when Joel and Ellie were there. And so this is brand new. This resistance is we're in the middle of a major uprising, and it's brutal, and to give kind of a visual to that, is, to me, just very, like, it was very harsh visuals, and it was very effective, like showcasing, like, not only like what actually happened and what this group of people look like, but like how mad they are at, and also how just unflinchingly, I guess, brutal they are with the Fedra soldiers and things like that.
Yeah, something The Last of Us does really well I think, is setting, like, it sets the stage as quickly as possible, but very fully. It doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel sparse. You are immediately just in that moment. And again, this is our kind of intro to Sam and Henry to humanize them and get us on their team before they meet our main duo. And they did it in like 15, I don't know, I didn't time it, but like felt like 15 minutes. Like you get in their headspace, you get in their relationship. And The Last of Us does such a great job of just ingratiating these new characters to you just quickly and fully, which I really liked. So I think it was a good way to bring them in, because when we leave them, or I guess when we first meet them at the end of episode 4, these two random people have guns pointed at the two people that we are told we're supposed to care about. And then boom, episode 5 comes in and you're just immediately on their team again. And I really enjoyed that.
It's so hard to tell in these scenes because they're only using like flashlights and moonlight and things like that. At the end of the episode, did he have the red paint when he's pointing the gun at Joel? Was that supposed to be there? It's so hard for me to tell, like, if that's actually on his face.
I like to think it is. I like to think it is, but I feel that I notice it more the second time around, and I just don't know if it's because I was cognizant of it and we saw how it happened or what. But I don't
Sure.
know.
How do you feel about the change of making Sam deaf in this adaptation?
I think if he would have lived longer, that would have definitely come in handy for the two of them to be able to communicate silently around infected that track you by sound. I feel that it's just a great, like, it's not a party hack because the child is actually deaf, but it would be a good thing for everyone in your party to know, because then you would be able to communicate without triggering anyone. We both listened to the podcast, but I love this kid that they found to play Sam. I think, am I right? They found him like through a Twitter call.
A little bit through a Twitter call, yeah. They said they had 5 people that auditioned.
Right.
It's just such a very, very specific call, and not the least of which is he was younger here in the casting than he's supposed to be in the game. I think in the game, he is younger than Ellie, but he's more along the lines of the same age, and I think has just not hit, I guess, like puberty. You know what I'm saying? Like if Ellie's 14, like she's probably like hitting that certain, and they're both kind of at the same like prepubescent, about to like
The
change
cusp
it,
of-
you know, whatever. Like, and he's maybe like 12 or 13 in my view. And still very much like a boy, you know?
Yeah.
This one, they just make it very plain. He's 8 years old.
Right.
You know? So not only does he have to rely on Henry as an 8-year-old, but he has to rely on Henry as a person who can't hear anything, which is something that they were very adamant about in terms of why they made him deaf, you know? Just make that extra little element of why he needs Henry in order to survive in this kind of world. Which I felt like maybe is a little bit like pulling on the strings, you know, kind of a little early. I'm like, oh, you're just making it worse. And then also apparently he had leukemia, which is again a movie thing, you know, like but at the end of the day, I still feel like what The Last of Us does really well is when they do these things and they allow representation, or they do it in such a good way.
It's not superfluous or put on.
Right. You know, him being deaf doesn't become like a plot point or a thing that needs to, I guess, like, it doesn't like define him, you know. It's just a thing, you know. They still communicate the same way. All the scenes with Sam still end up being the exact same.
Right.
You know? It just becomes, I think the thing that makes it more tragic is his age, not his deafness.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
It's more the change that I feel like is more prevalent here is like the aging down of him, you know? Because you don't get like a boy that's turning into a teen and then like kind of like fighting back a little bit, and kinds of things, a little bit more rambunctious or whatever,
Yeah.
he's a boy that needs to like be protected kind of thing,
And I think that plays perfectly into like how hard this rocks Ellie throughout the episode is just bringing down his age that little bit allows her to step into a sort of protector responsibility role, which we'll, get to. But I think it worked really well.
Yeah. I think the more, again, deaf, younger age, even more tragically, he's left-handed, Shannon. And it's just such a sad thing. These poor left-handed
children.
People, I can't. Oh man, have they not been told?
A really great thing for him though is that he has that wonderful like magic board that we all used to play with as kids. It's like your hand never smears the ink, so he's got it hacked. Just.
And all those drawings, though, he's just got.
Oh yeah, you're right.
He's just what a
this
disaster.
Is such a silly thing to bring up, but something that really bothered me was how dull the pencil was when he's drawing the map. It makes sense that a pencil would be very dull, but I could just feel like the like wood part of the pencil scraping on the paper while he was drawing those lines.
Yeah, imagine how delicate. This is like the one pencil you have, and your only way of probably sharpening it is going to be with a knife or something,
Oh my God.
So you guys just got to be so careful with that thing.
Like
I hate having a pencil. I don't have a sharpener right now, and I'm trying to I have a couple of pencils, and I cannot. It's like, oh man, this is so.
I'm like, you don't want to erase anything.
Yeah.
It's your only eraser. Talking about the real problems here on this podcast.
Yeah. So, also, no offense to left-handed people. My sister is left-handed. I think it's just a fun little joke.
I know a left-handed person.
50% of the world. Our representation, they know no bounds here. The real disability is the left-handedness, I think. And that's a joke.
Yeah.
That's me just making a joke at the expense of left-handed people everywhere.
You know what? Left-handed people can take it. They're used to getting some shit, I'm sure.
But yeah, love this kid. As we kind of predicted, Henry and Sam were there when Joel and Ellie had the laundromat thing. They saw Joel, and somewhere Henry decided, oh, new plan. This guy's capable, I guess. I don't know why he trusts Joel so much that he can get out of there. I think it's mostly, again, the fact that he knows how the resistance works and how dangerous they are. And if they're after him, now they're going to be after Joel.
Mm-hmm.
And Henry is not, I feel like, as capable as he was in the game.
Yeah. And I think, again, that kind of helps the empathy that we develop for Henry and Sam. I think Henry sees Joel and thinks, I've never seen this man before. He's not part of Fedra and he's not part of the resistance. So Joel shouldn't have any predetermined biases against Henry and Sam. And I'm sure something's going through his head that's like, all right, he's already made enemies. He doesn't know me. He has no reason to not like me. If I play my cards right, we can be allies before anyone else gets to him. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a good moment for him to realize that he has an out.
I think it would have been a different thing had we seen Ellie. And I don't think that, obviously they followed them. So at some point you would have assumed that they'd seen Ellie.
Yeah.
Right. And there is a thing where you're like, okay, Joel, scary man, whatever. But then Ellie shows up, and I could see in Henry's head probably, and in the same way that Joel, what happens when they do confront Joel and Ellie, and Joel's being held at gunpoint by an 8-year-old kid.
Right.
There's a little bit of he's doing everything right. He's cautious. He's very still. Doesn't want to get shot by a kid, but also it's a kid. Mm-hmm. There's something about seeing an adult traveling with a kid in this world that changes how you view them, changes how you see things, right? Because if Henry sees that, he knows that Joel, as dangerous and scary as he might look, he's traveling with a kid, and that makes him different from everyone else.
Yeah. And I think that's why Henry chooses to hold Ellie at gunpoint. And that's why I also think you're right. He definitely clocks Ellie and Joel are together, because he puts Sam on Joel you're big, well-to-do, capable man, but he takes Ellie as
Mhm.
the perceived idea that obviously the grown adult would probably do more damage. And I just love that he isn't afraid to call Joel out for the fact that if you're traveling together, you care about this person. But then I also love that he just flips the script and you can tell he's like, dude, I don't want to do this. I'm just here because I didn't want to wake you up and have you shoot me like you shot everyone else.
Mhm.
But ultimately, I'm Henry and I want to put this gun away as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
And I like that energy in him because you're right. It is a little different from game Henry. He seems so much more trusting and like open.
They have their rules, right? Like
Yeah.
we only take what we need kind of thing. Like they've been on the run, not on the run, but like surviving like
move.
on the road for a while. They haven't been in any QZs. I don't know if they were from Pittsburgh, if they were part of that whole game sequence, but you could tell that they've been like not trusting of like other things and just surviving on their own. They protect each other, you know?
Right.
They're in this thing and there's all these rules and they've been doing it for a while, you know? Henry here, he's doing this, it's all like a show, it's all a farce. There's no guns in the bullet. We know from 10 days ago that they had no ammunition. They're completely out.
Right.
You know, this is just a last resort. This is, you know, guns talk here and he's only using it as like a imagery and he plays a very, very smart game here. Like you said, he put Sam on Joel. So the first thing that Joel sees is Sam. And also he sees Ellie in danger. And there's a whole, there's elements to that, you know, and he sees like the guns mean something. It's only a means for Henry to be able to get in the words that he needs to get in.
Yes.
You know? So we see that he is a very, very smart, not that he's incapable, but he is very smart. He's just playing things very, very differently than I think Joel would. Joel would probably shoot first.
Yep.
and talk later.
Yep.
You know? Very, very interesting to me. Yeah, but what was I was going on something else there. Do you have any thoughts on their meeting?
Well, I liked a lot, and I mentioned it when you and I were watching it, the hug that Sam and Henry share right before they see Joel.
Yeah.
I said this. I felt that hug. I felt the way that hug would feel in my body. And I love the look on Henry's face because you can just see exactly what he's thinking when he's looking at all these drawings of these superheroes and like that was really touching to me. And I like how it kind of parallels the hug near the end that Ellie also shares with Sam. It's like that's just very vulnerable, very intentional connectivity. And I just want to touch on that before we move on because, oh, what a nice hug.
What do you think he was thinking there? You mentioned that you know what he's thinking, but
just the weight of the responsibility of loving someone. I just think in that moment he's really cognizant of it, of that this person is so dependent upon me and it is my job to make sure that he's okay. And the way that we do that now is by following this man and figuring out where we're going to get food and how we're going to get out of the city. And I feel that in that moment, he just like breathes and centers himself because he realizes, again, like this is the position that you put yourself in when you're with someone that you love.
yeah, there are things that kids do that sometimes catch us off guard as adults. Because there are things, the way that they feel things. I'm reminded of Peter Pan. There's a line in the movie when they start talking about fairies. I'm talking about the 2003 version, which is my favorite Peter Pan version of all time. And when they're talking about fairies, the narrator or Mrs. Darling mentions that fairies only have room for one emotion. You know, so at a time.
Right.
They can only feel one thing at a time. And I feel like the reason that's so impactful and Peter Pan being a story like for kids and about emotions, and especially when we think about like also Inside Out, one emotion at a time for a kid. These emotions are big, you know, and we forget that as adults. We're able to compartmentalize. We're able to like understand like how to logically put things in situations. He knows like this guy's not coming back. It's foreground, we have to leave kind of thing. He's kind of giving all the things, and all Sam cares about is like, is he dead? You know, and he feels that like immediately. And so the hug is like a surprise, I think, for Henry, because he doesn't expect that emotion, because he has to not be emotion. Like he has to almost like kind of push that away so that he can protect this kid, but the kid needs to take the time to
process the emotion,
to do that and to be there, and you can't interrupt that when
Right.
a kid is feeling those things. And I think that's a hard thing to realize and to remember, that like kids feel things really hard and for quite a while sometimes, you know. It hits them, especially when it's something that's so new for them, you know. Death is a new thing. All this is probably fairly new to Sam. Death maybe not as new. He understands people die and go away, so he's obviously like learned that to be able to ask the question.
Right.
But it's still something that he holds to him, you know. Even if he hasn't known this doctor for very long. We haven't known this doctor for very long. And it's like, why are you so emotional over this person? And kids remind us, why not?
Yeah.
Why not be emotional?
And that's why Ellie is really interesting too, because I don't think in the healthiest way, but we see her constantly experience trauma and try to compartmentalize. And I think that comes with just things that she's been exposed to already. As we know, Sam is an 8-year-old boy, so he's going to have different coping skills than Ellie does. But again, even near the end of this episode, we watch Ellie experience trauma and immediately try to compartmentalize. And that comes with just, seeing death over and over and over again and getting desensitized to it. And when Joel mentions in the car, like, you wouldn't know, you haven't seen the world, it's like, Ellie's seen some of it. Sorry, that was from a previous episode. But
It was, yeah.
she's seen enough of it that she knows that she can't sit in every big feeling that she has. She already feels the weight of, to survive, you have to compartmentalize. And Sam, luckily, as an 8-year-old, just isn't there yet.
So we move to them now in the high rise, and the day is over. We see the entire city. I love seeing the city, which we didn't get in the game, and we don't often get this visualization in a post-apocalyptic kind of thing. Like, usually we're in a wasteland, you know, or we're in like some like rural areas, like no one's around kind of thing. You don't often get to see like a city, a normal view of something that like is just dead. It's like lifeless, like nothing's happening except for the people that are trying to kill you, maybe, you know. I find it strange. The resistance has happened. It's not like there's fires everywhere. You know, you don't get the normal kind of destruction. It's just still. It's just like still, and like there are dangers out there, and they could be anywhere. But I love that they can see it for a moment from their tower, you know, and it seems so almost peaceful, and which is also unnerving in a way, because you like, it's like, man, I could be safe. You could just be safe here, you know, but they're not safe,
but no.
you know?
It almost makes me...
And also, I'm sorry, how much city that they have to get through, too.
Yes.
To see all that and be like, oh, this is a lot. They're deep in it, you know?
Yeah. Seeing the city...
Yeah.
When I think of toppling a government, you're right. I think of fires and like looting and crashed windows.
Yeah.
To not see a lot of that damage makes me wonder how calculated and like vicious Kathleen's plan was when they went in and overthrew the government that night.
Yeah.
Because in my head, if there was a lot of resistance or pushback, there would be a lot more damage in that city. Obviously, the city's fucked in its own way, but I'm wondering if it has something to do with just the severe focus and brutality that the resistance fighters came in with, but that they were able to just step on whatever.
Well, the resistance also was, I think, just the city, you know, and Fedra was the, like, usually even under like martial law, when you're the government in that sense. You're kind of the minority, but
Mhm.
you're a strong minority because you have more guns and more firepower and
Right.
things like that, you know? But I imagine that there's plenty of Fedra soldiers that also turned against themselves, you know, for this
Mm.
to even happen, you
Mhm.
know? Like Perry probably could have been like a kind of a contractor in this world,
I
or
could
like
see
was
that.
something like that. He like was there. Maybe he worked. I don't know exactly. We still don't ever really get an understanding of what his relationship is there. But yeah, it's still. I think that it probably was a lot easier to take over these guys than needed, you know.
Yeah.
But here we see the city that they have to get through.
Mm-hmm.
Joel learns that Henry is a collaborator. He's like, no, I don't work with rats, you know? So Joel has a code here.
No rats.
But how do you feel about that? Like, it's interesting. I think that gets challenged a little bit throughout the episode.
I think his idea of no rats is in like self-preservation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can't trust a rat. Therefore, I don't want you around me and the thing that could compromise myself.
Yeah. The thing, okay, I'm just going to jump back and forth here.
Do it.
Joel being, I think this is an interesting thing about Joel, and we learn later when Henry and Joel are having their conversation in the tunnels that Henry, he's like, I'm a bad guy. I did bad guy things, you know, and Joel's really struggling with this because as he learns more about Henry and he sees who Sam is and stuff like that, he's like, I don't understand like why you're this person that people are after you and things like that. And the thing is like, Joel, you jumped to that conclusion first. Like also you immediately, like you heard collaborator, like I don't work with rats, you know? And I think Joel is learning as we're learning that there's no, like, it's not, Fedra's not just the bad guy, you know? And like the collaborators are not like, it's not an easy line to draw.
No.
Like Joel, as many of the bad things that he's done, he thinks that they're worse for some reason, but it's not that easy to look at.
Right.
There's bad guys of all different colors. There maybe are no bad guys in that sense. They're all bad guys. They're all good guys. It's all just a matter of perspective, you know? And I think that's the thing that he's learning and that we're learning throughout this entire episode is that we're all under these like shades of things. It's things that we're doing to survive, you know. It's not as clean cut as we're made out to be. When Kathleen is confronting the collaborators, the quote unquote collaborators in the jail cell, you know, she's like, was it worth it for your apples, for your medicine? And like, you have to, I'm sitting here thinking, what? Yeah,
Probably
Kathleen,
was, yes.
Well, what do you want them to do? You know, like we're all trying to survive. No one knows what to do. It's been 20 years and we're still in this situation, and like we don't know how to get out. But we also need medicine. These are the people holding it. Like, no, we don't like them either. But like, what are you supposed to do? You know, like, we were all supposed to join you? And like, clearly, Kathleen is not a good guy here either, you know? And like, you're like, she can't see like her reflection in the mirror, so to speak, in all these people. Like, you're just, you know, I think she knows who she is though. Like, she understands it. She just refuses to. She's just, again, selfishly, it's her perspective. This is how it is in her world.
Like, you always think that the thing you're doing is the right thing and it's justified. We justify our choices with the stories that we tell ourselves. So in Kathleen's mind, I'm sure she's not a villain at all. She's a hurt woman who lost her brother and is seeking justice for people that have been wronged. On the other end, if I'm one of the collaborators that my daughter was starving and I sold information to them so I could feed my kid, I'm the hero in my story. I didn't do that to hurt anyone. I did that to better the life of my child. So it is all about perspective. And that's why with Joel, he pretends to operate in such hard rules, but ultimately everyone, including him, is just different shades of gray, depending upon what side you're looking at it from.
Mm-hmm. We all want the same things. We just go about it in different ways.
Yeah.
So now these two groups of people are finding common ground in how they have to get out the city.
Mm-hmm.
This is where, again, I wish we had gotten more of this, right? This should have been like maybe the end of the episode. You know, if this was episode 4 and they had met up and stuff, maybe this could have been the end and then they could have started here. You know, I felt like we needed more of this kind of like back and forth. The only thing I have written down here is like, I love Sam's laugh. Like, we don't hear, like, obviously we don't hear him that often. He doesn't speak, you know, but like anytime we get any like noise or from him, it's like there's a laugh, you know, like that has to come out, you know. That's the thing that like just has to happen whether you can speak or not, you know. Like it's just a thing, and that is like the heartbreaking thing, you know. And I love how Henry tries to keep him involved, you know. Like he's 8, but like, hey, fill them in, like you're also part of this, you know, just because you can't like hear what's going on and I'm trying to convince them, like, you know, remind them, tell them how we're getting out, you know. And he keeps him involved, you know.
Yeah, he keeps him relevant and important too, to show that, you know, you're taking on, I guess if you're in Joel's perspective, you already have Ellie to take care of. And Ellie is her own special thing, but she's something to take care of. And now you have 2 people who have knowledge of the city, but don't have ammo, don't have food, have never probably been in combat, I'm guessing, if he's never had to kill anyone. So as Joel, you're taking on the weight of these 2 people.
Yeah.
And I think there's a little part of Henry that wants to ingratiate Sam to Joel as well as a protective layer too.
Yeah.
But he says it like, you know, you're not, even if you're not a dad now, like maybe you used to be.
Yeah.
It's having kids around. When you watch Joel and Henry watch Sam and Ellie, I feel like Joel just wants, like, you see how easily he can just fall into that paternal role. And Henry is smiling. He's so happy. He's like, I'm so glad Sam has someone to be a child with, to go do child things while the adults decide what we're going to do and how we're going to survive. And Joel is all clenched fists and looking out the window and like just wants to move forward and do the job because he knows how dangerous it is, I think, to be affected by that love. And I think he's still trying to kind of draw those boundaries of like, okay, well, if Ellie's already sneaking in, like, I really don't want these 2 to also sneak in because then they've endeared themselves to me and I'm again responsible for more people.
And we know from listening to the writers that this is an episode about duos, you know, and I think that's what's very clear in the scene is we're seeing. We had already had a little bit of interaction with them when they were like sharing food and stuff like that. But what's even more clear and interesting is that Joel is starting to think of Ellie as part of his team. You know, like there's a dichotomy between these 4 people, and Joel and Ellie are on one side, and Sam and Henry are on another. And when Joel's like, "You expect us to go into a tunnel," and that's a very interesting thing, and this is the first interaction that they've had with anyone that wasn't like Tess or people that or Marlene, where they've been seen together, you know, and it's just been those 2. And like normally we would have gotten Bill that would have seen them, but that probably would have been interesting, but we don't get that, you know. So here we get, this is his first interaction of having to like, now he's not only just taking care of Ellie and like Ellie's something that's cargo or whatever, now she is with him and he's with her because now they're face to face with someone, and you have to kind of explain the relationship or point out is like they are an us now.
Yes, major know? Us them energy. I even like when he taps her and he's like, "Get your gun out." I know it's because Ellie has a gun with ammo and is the only other person that has a gun with ammo.
Right.
But the smirk on Ellie's face when she gets to take that gun out, she's like, like that's cool for her.
There's a little bit of I think maybe why Henry says like, I know I can tell you've been a father before, you know, is because he's starting to trust Ellie, and he's also starting to trust Ellie to to do the things that he specifically has kind of taught her to do.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, I've given you you've been with me for a while, you see how things are done.
Mhm.
Now you are an extension of me. You
Yeah.
know, like you are part of my team, you are an extension of me. You have to do it the way that I would expect you to do it,
Mhm.
you know? And I think that is the paternal side of him, right?
Yeah.
You know, that
Mhm.
that wants to feel proud of the person he's with and to put that trust into that person, you know, because
Right.
you would think that he could trust Henry after a little bit of talking or whatever, like this is the other adult, like give him the gun, you know, give
Right.
him the other gun and whatever, but he'd rather trust Ellie because he's been with her for this time and he's also knows that she's been learning from him,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, I wonder when they're talking about Kathleen's brother, when they do finally have the moment where Joel's like, what did you do? I'm getting medicine for my leukemia-ridden brother. And he's talking about Michael and he says, there's one great man that you would follow anywhere. Have you ever met a man like that before? And then we cut to Joel and we get like 2.5 seconds of just him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, do you think he's thinking of anyone?
Tess.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I think like, maybe your
Oh.
thinking is supposed to be a man or something like that. But no, the one
I
person
wondered if it was Tommy.
that is has no fear
Yeah.
and is also like very forgiving.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, I think it's Tess, because as much as like you would think it's Tommy, Tommy's not there.
Yeah,
He's
I
not,
know. I
they're
thought
not
maybe it was
they're not
Tommy.
around.
No.
Who would he follow? Who has he been
It's
following and been
Tess.
with? And Tess is
Oh.
her own breed of badass, like probably not as forgiving to certain extents. Like
Yeah.
when they go after, in the very beginning, they go after Robert because no, she's not forgiving. Like
Yeah.
he sold the battery that was supposed to be sold to them,
Right.
and to a certain extent, they're going to go get it back, But
Mhm.
she also was like, hey, like your guys beat me up. It's fine. Like, like
just
we
want the
can,
battery.
we can get past this kind
Yeah.
of thing, So there are elements of Tess that are, I think, what he sees, the person that you respect so much. I think that's who I thought of immediately.
I'm changing my answer to that answer. That's a better answer than Tommy. I like that answer.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, fuck you, Tommy. Tess all the
Wow.
way. Well, yeah, I think that moves us into some sharpshooter territory then as we make our way out of the tunnels.
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit of kind of a fake out, right?
Mhm.
Because this takes up a larger sequence in the game. In fact, by this time, we've gone, I want to say, yeah. We would have already gone through the sharpshooter sequence. We would have already like dealt with the truck. I believe. No. I'm wrong. That's wrong. That's the wrong statement.
Back it up.
I'm messing things up. Point being, when they get to this tunnel sequence, this isn't something that's like under the city. These are not like maintenance tunnels in the game. It's just like some sewage tunnels or whatever that they find, like actually more outside the city, like kind of in the suburbs, right? And there's plenty of infected down there.
Right.
In fact, they get separated, and Sam has to go with Joel, and Ellie has to go with Henry. And it's a very interesting dynamic where, like, again, you're getting points of view where Joel just wants to get back with Ellie. And doesn't want to be stuck probably with another kid,
Right.
But there's like an interesting thing of them, like, like now the person that like I didn't want to take care of was the person I was taking care of, and now
Right.
she's away from me. Like, there's a whole thing. We don't get that here.
Right.
We still get there was a group down here surviving, and there were kids down here, and again, more moments of Henry and Ellie being able to just be kids,
Sam and Ellie.
and I love that you get little bits of stories of who was down here and the protectors that there
Yeah.
were, and I love all that like world building. and of course the infected, so a little bit of a fake out because we don't see the infected. I just found like a little bit interesting, and I wish we hadn't just kind of like, I felt like we could have had it, we could have like delved into that a little bit more. I don't know why they wanted to kind of rush this. This is where I do feel like we rushed a little bit of this Sam and Henry story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do find that it is interesting again to go back to the conversation about like, I'm a bad guy, like you can say it, I'm a bad guy. And he's saying like, because I killed someone I respected. I killed someone that like meant a lot to me, but he didn't physically kill him.
No.
He just turned him in, and how to him, he puts himself at a lower position than Joel, who has killed plenty of people without questioning it. At this point, he is literally a bad person, and he's seeing something else in Henry, and he's like not understanding. He's like, well, if this guy's saying he's bad, then like, what am I? And also like, again, going back to like the preconceived notion that Joel had towards Henry and towards Sam, and seeing these two people and like, you're a rat, like I wouldn't work with you, to now understanding that like, what else do I not know? What else am I like his whole worldview is kind of getting upended here, in terms of what he thought he knew. And he, there were things he did know, like the KC, Kansas City, Fedra were savages and monsters. Like, yeah, that was like kind of true, and the resistance is just as bad. These are all just bad people all around. Like, he understands that, but he's finally like realizing that not everyone can just be boiled down to like these stereotypes, of what he believes in his like smuggling thing, and I do find that very interesting, very moving, and very compelling that Henry is just, that he holds to such regard, like what he did, was wrong, but he did it for someone, for someone that he cared about. And you see again, like how much Sam is like his world, which makes it even more tragic later on, like this is such an important person to him, Yeah. Yeah. Any thoughts?
This story is just so much about like, how far do you go for the people you love? And that ties in what you compromise on, what you justify, the revenge patterns we take. It's all about how far you push the boundaries for the people that you love. And I do like with Henry that we meet this soft person. All he wants to do is protect his brother. And he's never been put into a position where he has to apparently fight or steal or kill or do anything. That so far on his conscience, the worst thing that he's ever had to do is turn someone in. And I think for Joel, I almost feel like he's constantly justifying the fact that he's killed people. We even got it in the little teaser for the next episode. He's like, I did what I have to do to protect us. I don't think Joel is a bad person. I think he's a normal person that's had to do bad things. And I think that's a huge difference. And I think Henry as well. We see Henry is not a bad person. And even if it's a bad thing to sell out, I guess, the hope of a resistance, that doesn't make you a bad person. That just means that you're a human with feelings and you were put into a bad situation.
I'll push back on that a little bit. I do think, because I think Joel is, to me, the video game, and I get more into this when we play the second one, but I've always felt like that people misunderstood like Joel as like the main character, because in the video game you play as him and you do kind of justify your actions. You're killing people because they're trying to kill you. Like there's a whole lot of things there. And I think, to me, people felt like that they related to Joel because they were playing as him, and they like him so much and they see his journey and everything like that. But I felt like he wasn't the most compelling character. I felt like he was a bad guy, you know? And I do think he does change and that, like, he gets affected by Ellie, but that makes Ellie the more compelling character. I think when we see the reflection of Ellie in Joel and we see how Ellie slowly becomes Joel, we don't want that to happen because we know how bad Joel is, you know, and what he's done, you know. And again, it's semantics, like bad guy, bad Joel. I'm not saying like he's a bad person. Yes, he's had to do what he's had to do, you know. But in Henry, we see there was other ways to do what you had to do. And unfortunately, it's just a matter of values, I guess, or a matter of the codes that you kind of live by. And Joel doesn't live by those codes, you know, and he would, or he lives by a code that he wouldn't break, in that he believes at first people like Henry, they're doing the same thing that Joel is doing. They're just doing it without bloodshed.
Yeah.
You know? And Joel thinks that they crossed the line.
Right.
And we believe that, but he's seeing that there could have been other ways, you know? And I think we're going to maybe get that later with how Tommy, I can't wait to see how that maybe plays out. But I think I think Joel does need to reckon with what he's done.
Yeah.
I think that's the whole point of the thing. Tess even says it early on, like, do this because maybe we can redeem ourselves. You know, maybe we can make up for all the bad that we've done. I think he has to reckon with that. Like, he is a bad person. Does he deserve like any good that comes away? You know, life is unfair. You know, people who do really bad things get what they want all the time, and people who do good things don't get what they want, you know. And we're gonna see that again at the end of the episode, you know. Like like I think that is such a point to stop and like look at that, like Henry and everything that, like, he did everything that he should have and did what he needed to do as well, and you wouldn't call Henry a bad person, and yet what happens? Like, he loses everything, and Joel doesn't. You know?
You think that Joel is I think that Joel is a good person who through circumstances has warped into needing to do bad things, especially being alone. We see that I think he's at his best when he is like with company. He's better when he has someone to bring out the parts of him that died when his daughter died, essentially. Joel is, in my heart, not a bad person. We meet Joel with a daughter, good dad, constantly trying to take care of other people. I don't think this is a man that is intrinsically a bad human, but through pain and suffering and, again, just like terrible circumstances, you can be warped into justifying shitty behavior, from killing people to like stonewalling a child, right? It's just because you're not a bad person doesn't mean that you're not capable of doing shitty things to the world around you. But at his core, right, he's not someone that you would look at and peg as a villain. He's not someone that you think is a bad guy, because otherwise we wouldn't be rooting for him. We know that there's goodness in him. And that, honestly, I think, again, Ellie like starts to bring that out in him.
This
a
is
little
the
more.
classic anti-hero kind of like thing that we're dealing with, and that people root for bad people all the time, especially in today's media. This is kind of like the trope, right? Joel's not inherently a bad person. I don't think there is inherently bad people. I think there's maybe not good and evil. There's just selfishness, levels of selfishness, right? And I think that in essence, like, he has done bad things, and if doing bad things makes you a bad person, then yes, Joel is a bad person. And like, he crossed that line and he's stuck with it. It's not just someone that did a few bad things and like justified it. He's been doing it for years, and he's like closed himself off to ever thinking that he was like doing good or bad. He was just doing what was right for him. That's selfishness, right? like it matters and what was right for him and Tess. You know,
Mhm.
there are people that he had some loyalty to, but he wasn't afraid to like do those things. And like, yeah, there's no, I mean, the same with like Breaking Bad. Like we
Mhm.
root for Walter White, but like, what did he did
Like
so many
Walter
bad
White
things.
was a bad guy,
Yeah.
I think.
And I think Joel is here. Can you redeem?
Ooh.
Can you redeem people? Yeah. Can people like find some sort of redemption? Just we love redemption stories, you know.
Mhm.
Like that's the biggest story that we know known to man. Darth Vader was a bad guy that is redeemed at the end of Return of the Jedi.
Mhm.
You know, for us or for Luke, you know, but it's
Mhm.
at the very, very end of his
Right.
life, right?
Right.
Like you'd still say like he was the bad guy. He was the epitome of evil bad guy. He
Right.
wears a dark cloak. And Joel doesn't wear that dark cloak, so it's harder to see. We don't see a guy with like red eyes, like with
Right.
breath, that's like going around just killing people
Well, what do
willy-nilly.
you
But
think? What do you think? I hope all of y'all are still listening to this because it's very interesting. What do you think makes Joel bad?
that he chooses to not care about other people.
So that's what makes him a bad guy, is that he cares more about himself
I think
and
again,
his.
we're not gonna be able to break down like a whole like philosophy or like
Do
stuff like
it.
that. We can't get too
I'm so
thing
interested.
in this, but I think that is to me, it is an interesting conversation. I think that's the whole point of the series
Mhm.
too, of like recognizing that Joel is not someone that is like everyone has good intentions.
Mhm.
Any evil character, I think what I love about this game and what I love about stories that even I want to tell, and a good compelling like character, like
Mhm.
again, like here's another one, Black Panther, right?
Mhm.
Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger
Mhm.
was a very compelling villain.
Mhm.
Thanos was a very compelling villain, right?
Yeah.
They had intentions that you can justify, you think are good, but they do bad things. So what is he, you know? But
Yeah.
we still kind of agree with them, right?
Mhm.
Kathleen, why is she a bad guy, right? Because she's also doing the things that like she has good intentions. Her selfishness comes from revenge, but she also liberated entire city.
Mhm.
Fedra were the bad guys,
Mhm.
you know? So like, okay, so Kathleen did exactly what Perry and all the people following her wanted her to do, and she's ruthless, and she has to be. She's very smart.
Mhm.
You can justify it because compared to Fedra, she's the good guy.
So badness is almost in comparison to what's around you.
Again, it's like a spectrum, right? So if Fedra's the bad guy that we start with, Kathleen is the good guy compared to them. And then if Kathleen is the good guy, but Henry is our good guy, then she's the bad guy by comparison, right? Okay, but then Henry believes he's a bad guy. What is good? What is bad? You know?
Right.
And like again, where Henry falls, if he's the bad guy, where is Joel in between Kathleen? If the spectrum is between Kathleen and Henry, where do you believe that they fall? Then where is Joel? He's clearly in between them.
Yeah.
Like where is he, right?
I think Joel's probably closer to Kathleen.
Exactly. And so you would
yeah.
consider him again a quote unquote bad guy. And I think that's the spectrum. Is like, am I saying that Joel's a bad guy? Like, you know, like it's how we talk about it, right? Like, and again, that goes to show there is no bad guy. Like we're just different. But I think Joel has done morally bad things and ethically bad things, and I think that to him and to everyone, if you got to know him, and he could keep getting pushed a certain way. I think he was and could have been kept getting pushed a certain way because without Tommy, without Tess, and then without Ellie to bring him back from the brink, he could be the bad guy.
Could be a menace.
He could be the person that's intimidating or like the villain of any of these stories. Like, yeah, a good villain can justify their things, and we can relate to them in a certain way and what their thoughts are. There are people that saw Melanie Linsky's performance here and heard what she had to say, and you're like, you're right. What is one kid to everyone else, like that was one person. And to Henry, that means everything. And to us, we're like, yeah, it's a kid. It's an 8-year-old kid. But like, you're from an outsider's perspective, you're like, you gave up someone that was good by your own admission, Henry. This person was good and you gave him up. You essentially killed him for this thing. And this person was going to save our city, but you could not stay loyal to him. Like
And again, it's like, what do we do for the people that we love? I have that quote written down because, so direct quote, you think the world revolved around him, that he's more important than everything? Number one, ouch, because when you love someone, like, absolutely, that is the fucking case.
Sure.
Especially, I think, I don't have children, but like, especially with kids, because they are so just vulnerable and dependent and honest with what they think and feel because they have to be. And I really like that's setting up something we're gonna see Joel grapple with by the end of the season, is how far you go for love and what happens when one person means more to you than everything.
No, for sure. That's why I think this is a great question to look at and to rethink about. Like, especially as we get near the end of the season, or even into the second season or whatever, when we learn more and more about Joel, like, I think people need to grapple with, like, who was he really? Like, what did he do? And like, what does he deserve? And that's why I think it's important to note that, like, it's not always about what we deserve, because life is unfair. These things happen. Kathleen says it ends how it ends. And that's, to me, it ends the way it ends. That, to me, is like the thing. That's just it, you know? It is what it is, right? What will be, that is life in a nutshell to me, we can define these things as good and bad, and that's what we're all kind of almost compelled to do, that, look at like the spectrum. I think that's the whole point. It's like, okay, well, these are the bad guys, but then we see the beginning of the episode and the resistance people is like, man, they did some bad things to these federal soldiers. They're the bad guys, and
Right.
Kathleen's the bad guy. And then we see like the collaborators, and Joel sees them as like the bad guys, and then we
Right.
see Joel, like, it's like, no, it's not cut and dry. We are compelled to define things in these terms, but it's maybe if we stop looking at the world in that way, we would see that it's not mattered. Things are the way they are. It ends how it ends. Sometimes you can't control these things,
Right.
I look at, not to get too, I guess, religious about it, but more of like as a philosophical way. I look at the Bible, and again, Ecclesiastes being my favorite book, where it's like, things just repeat. There's a time for mourning, there's a time for war, there's a time for, like, things just kind of happen, and you don't know why this person who works so hard and farms so much and like sows the seeds and everything, like, gets absolutely nothing, and then the other person over here who does barely anything, like, gets everything, right? And I think that's just like the way the world kind of, like, we forget, because we feel like we have to define things because that's our way of like having control over it, and when we look at Joel and just the things that he's done on the checklist, like, yeah, like, he's done some bad things, Is he a good person? Yes. Is he a bad person? Yes. Like, does it matter though? Like, what is it? What are we reckoning with? Like, what are we really saying in these things? At the end of the day, what do people deserve? What do people don't deserve? Like, it's hard to say, it really just means nothing. These things mean absolutely nothing, no matter how we define it, because there's no checklist. There's no actual like thing that defines, there's no line,
Well, I
that
don't know
we keep
what
saying.
philosopher it is, but it's the idea that, like, we exist through the lens of others, and that without other, you don't have a reflection of self because there's nothing to compare it to. If I was exactly my personality, but no other human in the world, I would have no idea if I were good or bad. It's only in comparison to others that we find out who we are and what we bring to the table.
Yeah.
And again, that's why the Joel and Ellie relationship is just so special. And it's because you see Ellie as this like ferocious, odd, aggressive, but also childlike, joking. Like she mirrors Joel in some ways and brings out warmth in him in others, which is why they're such a compelling duo, a dangerous duo, especially as she gets older and they get closer. Like there's just so much to that dynamic of how they mirror each other and give and take from each other, both good and bad, quote unquote, good and bad. But yeah.
And I have a feeling this conversation is going to come up later a lot more too when we talk about like you said, Tommy and things like that. When what we know about Tommy is that he was a joiner. He wanted to do good things, but as we see, something's changed in Tommy, you know? And again, that to me goes back to Ecclesiastes, where when Solomon or whoever wrote that, the philosopher or whatever, the teacher as he's named in that book, like he says, of my favorite things, there's nothing new under the sun. Like, what more can you do but eat, drink, enjoy your toil? And I feel like that's where we eventually like find Tommy, you know, at the end of the day, is like you can justify being good, you can justify being bad, you can do these things. Like it's all about like what is altruistic, what is evil, like what do we have to do as society to like stop being as there are definitely people probably yelling at their like phones right now at us. I was like, well, we know what good is, and we know when we compare other bad people, like what should be the right thing to do for society. And it's like that is even harder to define, I think, a lot of the times. And I think it's otherwise we wouldn't be struggling with these questions for thousands of fucking years.
Right.
And then to me, it's like at the end of the day, what more do you do? Eat, drink, enjoy your toil. That's to me like all that matters. I think that's where we find Tommy, who has become the person who's like, I just want to build a place that I can call home, a place that is where I can share it with the people that I love, you know, and I protect those people, you know, and it's not about an agenda, you know. Everyone else in the world has like agendas of what they want to accomplish and how they want to succeed and all these different things. And to Tommy, that's not, again, I think we'll talk about it more. That's just not how he is. And I think that's what Joel reckons with, you know. He never built anything. He never built the home that he never could like settle down and just do that. There was always something else that he was like kind of striving towards, building towards. As much as he thinks that Tommy was that person and Tommy was that person, is like, you're the person trying to do good in the world, to save it and all those different things. Joel also has his own agendas that he doesn't recognize that he's also like kind of following and trying to do instead of just, I guess, exist, which is a harsh way to put it. But yeah, I think that's,
but you're right. Like Joel is afraid to build.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, when we experience big things, we often run either away or to. So if we look at Tommy and probably Michael, Kathleen's brother, they're people that when they're met with trauma and suffering around them, they run toward, how can I make this better? What can I do? Tommy wants to join the Fireflies and Michael wants to start the revolution. Do either of those people actually get anything done?
Sure.
Versus Kathleen, who doesn't want that.
Right.
Arguably, quote unquote, the baddie compared to some other people, but then she steps into that position and gets shit done.
Yeah.
And Joel, if we look at Joel versus Tommy, if Tommy's the one that is the do-gooder and Joel's the one that cleans up, Joel's the one that's getting stuff done. But I think there's a part of Joel, and again, we've seen Tommy for like 2 seconds, but you're so right. I think Tommy has found his purpose, and maybe it's not joining a huge resistance that's going to fix everything. It is building a life that you can love with people that you can share with and just live. And Joel has been terrified to do that. We saw the way he couldn't even connect with Tess, someone who was willing to be around him and connect with him in the way that he felt safe. He couldn't even put down roots with her in any meaningful way. So
we'll also look at the room that we're in when we're talking, me and you are talking about this. They're in this place. If you say like, yeah, what did all these people accomplish? Well, compared to this community that was in these tunnels, who I think accomplished a lot more
Yes.
than any of those people above the surface, because they found a way to live, to teach their kids, to give them a place to just be themselves. There was life here, and the life still goes on for them because of what they left behind.
Right.
And there were people that, yes, protected them, but it was just about just building, and I think there's something very much interesting to say about the fact that when Joel sees this, like, he doesn't understand it. He doesn't, he can't comprehend that this actually existed. He's like, oh, I heard about this, but like also he doesn't want to be here.
No,
He
it makes
can't
him
be here.
uncomfortable.
Yeah, and they have to like force him to be there. And I think that goes back to like what you were saying is like the only people that accomplished anything in this entire episode of note to the conversation that we're having is the people that we don't see.
Yeah.
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 But they get out of there.
So anyway, then they leave that area.
This is what you came to this podcast for, I'm assuming. It's like, you wanted to hear us talk about shit? Well, we talked about some shit. So.
Also, that should be our question that we post on Spotify is maybe like, is Joel
Who's
a bad
the real
person?
bad guy?
Who's the real bad guy?
And we have a poll up. Who's the bad guy? Is it the Fedra? Is it Kathleen? Is it Henry? Is
Joel.
it Sam?
What?
I figured, might as well throw him in
Might
there.
as well throw Sam in there.
I'm sure there'll
He
be
is
some
left-handed,
votes.
so
Those left-handed people, they are evil.
you gotta
I swear
watch
to
out
God.
for them. Truly,
I told you this was gonna come back. Anyway, so yeah, sharpshooter sequence. Okay, we're getting into some. There's nothing about this that I feel like we really want to like talk about in depth the way we just talked about.
No,
good and evil.
that was the big segue for now.
But here's the big, I guess, set piece that they built an entire cul-de-sac,
right?
Out of scratch. Like these houses are facades and interiors, and these cars are all there, built on a back lot from scratch. Just ridiculously crazy. Hundreds of extras. This took 3 weeks.
So much time
to film, and it all shows like on screen. This just goes to shows the power of like when you put it on in front of the camera, it pays off, don't you think?
When you do the thing, it looks good.
Sharpshooter the sequence leading up to this, the sharpshooter sequence is a direct comparison to the game. You as Joel have to get around while the sniper is shooting, and you're also having to take other people out because it's the whole group of people.
That's right.
And then you get the gun, and then the truck shows up, and then you have to like shoot at infected and bad people while also trying to protect these three as they're trying to run from these things. Happens a very similar way. Very fun sequence. Pales in comparison to what comes next because this is all brand new. And we finally get the payoff to what was under. So now we know. Okay, the interesting thing is we were like, okay, so is the fungus building? Are they building these tunnels? No, the tunnels existed. We know now.
Right.
So the tunnels existed. Maybe there was some extra building going or digging going on by the infected. I don't know,
right.
Like because clearly we didn't run into them, but these tunnels existed. And the infected were pushed away from the city in some way. And that's why they're under the city.
Yeah.
So it's not a whole new, like, fungus is building tunnels and everything, which I was like, are they going to start coming out of the ground everywhere we go?
It's less of a conspiracy than I was expecting. I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah.
But no, I loved, and honestly, I felt a little stupid because it did not occur to me that I was given that information, that Fedra drove them underground 15 years ago until they all fucking poured out of that opening. And I was like, oh yeah, that's everything. Oh my God. That looks so cool.
They're still coming out by the end of the sequence.
I know.
They're
Just,
like,
God, there's so many.
In reality, there's like a 15 to 20 foot hole that they had to like dig and put a bunch of extras in it, like duck down and then, come out, which is kind of funny when you think about it. But yeah.
Now, do you think those were stunt people?
They are stunt people. There's a lot. There's extras. A lot of extras. Not all stunt people. You would be fascinated and love to hear that the main two clickers, the ones that are like trying to get at Sam and Henry, like under the thing, are the same two that they had hired to do the clickers in the early on. I don't remember their names. I'm sure you do. But
I do.
You have it.
I have
don't worry about it.
it.
It's the same people.
It's the same people.
That's what it is. So that's fun. So they're still leading the charge of the clickers. Probably taught all the other extras. But these are, people, these are locals that they hired to be a part of this,
Oh, okay.
So they're not all stunt people. There
were just a lot of stunt people on the list.
As usual, as usual, there's going to be stunt people that do the stunts, but like there's just extras that are just
like running around in the background,
and like having to like look like, and
shout out to you guys too. You really sold it.
Yeah, and real prosthetics on people. We didn't get a look at like any prosthetics on a bloater, like in any behind the scenes things. So I'm assuming that most of that CG, which is a little disappointing. But like also like,
do you think?
I'm sure there was like a physical representation of him somewhere, and maybe I'm just missing. But they clearly didn't do a whole lot of prosthetics because otherwise they would have shown that in the behind the scenes. How do you keep?
I guess you're right. Yeah. How do you keep that like? Oh, so nonchalant. Yeah, we made a whole bloater.
Yeah,
maybe you're right.
But it really works here because I wouldn't have guessed who was CG either because like that's the lighting is so good, and it's so well done. The effects that are on display here, I think it's Weta also that's helping out with this. I may be wrong, but I want to say I read somewhere or it's part of something where they mentioned them having or actually the guy who was like the lead in some I think came from Weta it is Weta because he came from Lucasfilm to do this is what I heard in the podcast, right?
Okay.
So anyway, so Weta did have some involvement.
Weta's also behind Avatar if you're like me and don't always pick things up immediately.
Yeah, Avatar the Blue People, not Avatar the Last Airbender. You gotta be specific, Shannon.
You're right.
But they're also behind the Lord of the Rings and King Kong and all those other things. Come on, Shannon.
Hey, I'm just saying.
They've been around for a lot longer than Avatar.
Just in case you didn't know.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know. They did Avatar.
So and we get not only the introduction of the bloater, which we're all excited to see because the bloater, we just love a good
big bloaty boy,
a good bloater, especially when he's just going after the bad guys and not us.
Yes,
But we also get a new introduction of something that we've never seen, which is a tiny little
demon child. What the fuck?
Which could go up against the child in Barry, the karate.
Oh my god!
It's like, which one's more dangerous?
Maybe
I feel
that's our poll.
That's the real poll. I'm assuming you just loved that little gymnastic.
That kid freaked me the fuck out. But yeah, the way she's just like flopped. Every person they hire to do cool body things, I'm throwing it all the way back to that runner I loved when he flung himself over the diners, like tables and stuff.
Yeah.
The way she oozed and like flipped over the car, she's a demon.
Here's the thing: is like I think that I'm not a big fan of like so like it doesn't make any physical. I get in the sense that like. The physics or the rules of the zombies kind of thing, like that a zombie would flip around, kind of thing, or somersaults or like over seats, it doesn't seem like that they have the cognizance to do that kind of thing. But also you're going to tell a 6-year-old, 7-year-old girl gymnast to be a zombie. She's going to do those like somersaults and flips. I'm not going to say no to her. I'm
definitely not telling her no.
So like, I understand like when you're trying to get her to do creepy things. Yeah. When you tell a little girl like that to do something creepy, she bends over backwards and like shows you her head upside down kind of thing. 'Cause she's flexible and has no like bones or whatever.
She's got no bones.
So like, yeah, you're gonna put a prosthetic on her. She's gonna try and do a creepy thing, and it works.
I like to think there are moments where, because I was kind of thinking the same thing. I was like, number one, I haven't seen a child infected. So I'm like, maybe there's something there. Don't know what it is. Didn't think that hard. But in the car, I feel that they maybe tried to focus, like when she comes through the window, she's top heavy. like the side with all the infection. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
motivates
That's
the
true.
flip because then she's top heavy.
Yeah.
And then like the first thing she can pick up is like an arm. So then what follows that kinetic energy as she's moving?
Yeah.
So in a way, some of those movements made sense to me. And then in other ways, I was like, this demon bitch from hell. I don't know
Yeah.
what's happening. It's so creepy.
She defies gravity by jumping like 10 feet to like get on
Right.
Kathleen though. So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, we had our fun, but I want like realistic zombies to be honest. Like it happened. Demon child. I hope we don't see her again.
I never want to see that little girl again. You did a great job. I don't want to see you ever again.
Yeah, I do find it interesting that Perry probably would have survived had he just left the bloater alone.
Truly.
Like you instigated it. Like this is a thing that like doesn't know. There's no like strategy here for it, you know, and it can't even see you.
No.
And you bring attention to yourself by unloading your entire gun. clip
Yeah,
on
and
it.
you didn't have anything else left. Ren, I was like, no, that was so stupid. And I'm surprised. So again, this is where our criticism kind of comes with the Kathleen and Perry thing. It's like I didn't even really like the way that they went out. This is the thing that felt the most placemat for me.
The thing about Perry is that unfortunately he's played by a charismatic person that we want to be good because
Yeah.
not only did he play Tommy, but he's also like possibly the conscience of Kathleen, you know, and we could see how that dynamic works, you know, like he wants to do good things and he's here like as a loyalist to the resistance. Like he knows that we've had to do bad things, but he's the guy that's like, no, we're gonna be good. And I think he wants to like turn that around. And he's like, we'll find Henry, but after that we need to like focus on some other things, right?
Yeah.
Like actually protecting people, you know? And so like as like I feel like the death of him is cool. He gets his head ripped off, but he's not the guy that we were like, yeah, his head got ripped.
Yeah,
you know what I'm
no.
saying? We're not the guys like, oh, we're like, oh man, Perry.
Yeah.
you know, like, oh, did they have to do that to poor Perry?
Poor
you know,
Perry.
like, and Kathleen the same way. It's like, he's like, I guess we're supposed to be like, oh yeah, get that kid, you know, but like, there's no
I wasn't,
connection there. Yeah, there's
No.
not like and like also like, yes, she's after our protagonist and she's after Henry. It's not like a save that becomes like oh, they got out of there in time, like, oh, I'm so glad that happened, or
Right.
any sort of thing. We're just left with like, well, that happened.
It ends how it ends.
how it ends, you know, and maybe that's the point, you know.
Yeah.
I have no idea like what could have been of this group, what it was, like how Perry like was he was doing everything right in our view and the way that we look at it. Like what was he doing wrong, you know?
Right.
Like he was a very much a leader of the resistance. Like he wasn't the leader, but he
Right.
was a leader, you know.
Yes.
People followed him, you know. He did bad things too. I think they really had to justify how bad he was, because I don't think he comes off as bad.
He doesn't come off as bad at
He's like,
all.
oh, but he killed all those collaborators. Okay, great, cool. He's also not there to give Kathleen the like forgive people speech. He's like, no, like you did what you had to do, and like I get it. Like,
Yeah.
look, I'm with you all the way. So like, oh, okay, so like they're really pushing that Perry's kind of a bad guy too, but we don't.
Yeah,
you know?
it just doesn't read, and maybe it's because it's not in full context, because really all we've seen both of these people do, both Kathleen and Perry, is, I'm so sorry, like kill some people. And that sounds so bad, but when you also look at the fact that what else did they do? They freed a city. And Kathleen's crazy. Okay, I'm sorry, I don't want to get into this again.
Are you
but
gonna
like,
hold Kathleen to like what the people did on the street? She wasn't there.
She wasn't even
It's not
there.
her fault, right?
She didn't stab that guy with 28 knives and drag him through the street.
Yeah, she didn't physically hang the
She
people.
wasn't there,
Yeah.
guys. Just in the same way that Henry didn't kill Michael, I would argue that Kathleen hasn't killed anyone. So she's not a bad guy either. I'm just kidding.
Well.
But in a sense, though, right? Like, it's just, again, so there are people that you meet in media that you're like, I want you to get punched in the face. I have a lot of people like that I meet in media. Kathleen, I don't think I didn't have enough time with her to like build any sort of resentment toward her.
Yeah.
I just liked Melanie Linsky's performance. And
and
that's
I think
kind of
then
all.
that's the interesting thing about the performance too, is that we love it and the character is interesting, and I love I love the world building. It just doesn't tie into our story,
Yeah.
right? Because like even one of the she went on a little Twitter kind of thread thing that I
Yeah.
sent you where she talks about why she took the role, and in essence being. I'll link it in the show notes. You should all read this thread. I'm gonna have to paraphrase because I don't have it in front of me, but like talking about how this was a smart person. This is a person like. You mentioned last week about how this is a person that, which we also like kind of like inferred from, and I talked about like, yes, the brother was a leader of the resistance,
Right.
and it was a Christ-like figure to her, and she just had to like step into this role. And we're not seeing a person that's like a mob boss or like like these typically characters that you would see in these kind of like evil villain-esque roles. She's just a smart woman,
Dangerous.
she's just a person that like she said, what would it look like to have like a person that is like just the smartest in the room, not like the most ruthless, not like the most like dangerous or whatever. It's like, no, like you actually followed someone that makes sense. It's not the exact wordage that she used, but it just makes sense, like because she's able to like lead in a different kind of way, and it's actually like when you find she put it like as a woman in that position is again very different when we actually like see them as someone that doesn't have to fit this like kind of category that you think they'd have to be able to lead. She's just the person that like we kind of actually want, the person that we actually like should probably be pushing towards is like the person that's best for the job, right?
That she can make these plans and implement all of these actions to actually build, again, we could circle back to actually build something worth being a part of.
And that's compelling. And I think also she does such a great job. And I think it's almost more sad that she doesn't get to like be in charge.
Justice for Kathleen.
She did what she had to do. And like, there she is. Like, she got the resistance, but now Kansas City is fallen, right? But, she did some bad things, I guess. And we're supposed to feel, good about it or whatever. But, here we are.
Here we are.
Moving on. To the final sequence. They've made it to the hotel. They've escaped relatively unscathed, or what do you want to say here? What?
So many things. Well, so we'll just obviously the big thing that we find out is that Sam's been bitten. And immediately just reminded me of, it's easier when you're a kid. You don't have anyone relying on you. That's the hard part. Joel says that to Henry when Henry's like, oh, I hope they're going to be okay. I hope everyone's all right. Joel's like, of course they are. They're kids. Everything's fine. In the same way that Henry hugs Sam in the beginning and you can see exactly what he's feeling, I really felt Ellie's sense of responsibility peak. They close that door. The adults are gone. They're not in this room. What does she do? She taps him. She's like, hey, we can keep reading. She makes that choice. He opens up and shares with her. And her first instinct is comfort, number one. And then to try to save him. She keeps that secret from the adults because she's like, I can handle this. He came to me and my blood is medicine and I can handle this. And he asks her to stay awake with him. She promises, and they just have that hug, and you see Ellie's face, and you really just see that moment. I think that she realizes that in a way she can be responsible for this person, that this person, the small human, has ingratiated himself to her, and she feels some level of like commitment and responsibility for this life. And that's painful for me. It's just, it's so lovely and beautiful, and again, just sad because we see how fast Ellie has to grow up and adapt to the constant trauma that she's just bombarded with. I love Ellie.
Yeah, there's a lot I want to say about what Ellie, how that change happens in Ellie, especially at the end. To start off with the sequence for me, I follow the same cinematographer has been here since episode 3. He's been 3, 4, and 5. I started following him ever since the Bill and Frank episode.
Like on Twitter?
And he's posted a few things on there. unfortunately not remembering his name. I'm not going to look it up. I'll link some things in the show notes if you want to find him. He's been posting behind the scenes too, which is really fun.
Cool.
But also people have been pointing out the cinematography for these like last 3 episodes, and one of the things of like how they've had to play with light, right? So there's a practical thing that has to happen here where there's one light source for both of these scenes, right? And it's the lamp between Ellie and Sam in the room that's behind them, right? This is one lamp, but that also shines out into the other room onto our Henry and Joel. And there's a practical reason for that. We're using one source. There's no power. There's no actual like moonlight that can come through. Like it all kind of makes sense from a practical sense.
Yeah.
And there's some good cinematography on display here. And I think kind of, again, very, I guess, on the nose kind of way to look at it is that when you see Joel and Henry out looking in on the kids and the light is coming from the door onto them, that is a very obvious way to show that the light comes from these 2 people.
Yeah.
It comes from Sam and Ellie. It comes from the next generation. It comes from the people who are just reading a comic book and being kids and just living life. That is the future. That is what Joel and Henry are there to protect, are there to save, are there to push forward, and they're the teach, you know, but and while they're kind of like in darkness, but that light does reach them, you know, and again, it's practical. They have to have a light on our actors, otherwise we can't see them. They can't just be in darkness, you know, but there is, I think, a choice there.
Yeah.
Right? There's a choice there to show that, again, as we talked about earlier, the light from these kids are what kind of redeems everything that these 2 do. These adults, they have to do some things. They have to sometimes do bad things. But if anything, if it's service to save the future, like, then it's all worth it, right? Just a great visual element to show like what it means, you know, for these 2 adults that I don't think I didn't even really fully recognize until I like kind of like thought about it here, you know, and stuff. So yeah.
Ouch.
But unfortunately, we're gonna lose one of those lights.
Yeah.
The light that is Sam, when you just hear his laugh, you know, I don't know if it's the actor, I don't know if it's Sam, I don't know what it's a combination of both. Like he's just hearing him laugh is just so, it's a light in itself, you know, like it can be off screen and I can still feel something, you know, and he's not laughing that much here.
No.
You know,
no one is laughing here.
He's been laughing the entire episode anytime he can interact with Ellie, and he's not. He's scared. And this is another direct rip from the game. The dialogue is the same, I'll bet it's written instead of delivered, you know, which makes it even more like sad and tragic and like hard to like take, you know, because you have to wait for him to like say it, you know, you have to wait for him to express like his feelings and what's going on, and it's and therefore the actors have a lot to do to like express it just on their faces, you know, because you can't rely on dialogue. And so Bella Ramsey deserves so much for here, and so does Kevon Woodard, for what they've done here, because they're expressing it. I mean, Kevon has to. He has to express so much without saying anything, but like the fact that he can, you know, that's an actor.
Yeah.
That's what acting is. That's what Bella's doing so well here. That's what he's doing so well here. And if anyone had any doubts about what this person can do and why he should go so far and everything else, is that you don't always need dialogue.
Right.
To express what's going on through an actor's, what they're feeling, you know, what's going on through a character's head, any of those things. You don't need dialogue all that much. You don't need spoken words. And I hope he gets more. And this scene just shows like what he can do in that sense.
Now, did I make this up? He had not acted prior to this, right?
I don't imagine he's had many opportunities. He wants to
Right.
be an actor. Most deaf people probably don't have the opportunities that they should, which is why it's so good that they decided to give that representation here and make that change.
Mhm. And why Coda
Whereas
was such
I
a big
think
deal.
I think that change could have been very easily been like, okay, now you're just making the
Like
change to make a
pandering.
change,
Yeah.
or whatever. The fact that they did that and they searched for a person like to give that representation, people don't often have those opportunities. People with
Mhm.
disabilities just don't get it. So no, like, has he acted before? Well,
Well, no, that's what I
Well,
meant.
one,
Was
he's the
he
age.
training? Was because at a young age you can still like be in dance class or being in acting classes. I was under the impression that he like wasn't even sort of interested like in the acting world and just was right place, right time and
I
happened to
don't
have
know
that
that
authenticity.
I don't know that we can say when people say these things in
Yeah.
these interviews or whatever. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, like when you say offhanded, like he hasn't acted before, but you don't know what the circumstances are for those kind of
Right.
things. Has he been in plays? I don't know. Has he gotten the opportunity to do it? I don't know. Does he like when I was at that age? Would
Mhm.
I think about acting? I mean, until I was 18,
Mhm.
I didn't know what acting was. I didn't know there were such thing as actors. Like I was just whenever I did any acting, I just wanted to be the center of attention. Like I don't know what is an actor. Who was acting? I was acting at a
Mhm.
certain age, but I wouldn't have like said I was acting, like
Oh,
who
yeah.
or did I want to be an actor?
I was trying to be an actor.
So like there's a whole lot of different, I think it's
Yeah.
hard to say, and
You're right.
especially for people who are disabled or
Like
have
differently
these or
abled.
disabilities. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I don't know the correct terms.
We'll find him.
He might not have had those opportunities given to him. So of course he
Absolutely.
hasn't done anything before then. And he's not, unfortunately, just like Ki Hye Kwan that we've seen in getting an Oscar, like and like these awards and his performance,
Mhm.
like when he was a kid, like he had some opportunities. He thought he was going to be an actor, and then he stopped having him as an Asian American.
Right.
And I think the same thing's probably going to happen here, and I don't want it to happen, but like these people don't get opportunities,
Mhm.
and he deserves those opportunities the same as anyone else.
Yeah.
Representation matters.
It's like with Troy Kutzer and Coda
Mm-hmm.
of why that was such a huge deal. I mean, I liked Coda, but we had the conversation of like the reason that movie was so impactful is that it finally gives a different type of person the spotlight instead of your like white, able-bodied, like regular heteronormative presenting people.
Yeah. When I was in acting class, when I first left the military and started went to college for acting, one of my first scene partners was hard of hearing. She wasn't completely
Mhm.
deaf, but she went to the deaf school in Austin
Mhm.
because she couldn't hear as well. So I just had to
Mhm.
speak louder, and she could read lips in a way, but I didn't have to
Mhm.
sign. But that was also I would go and rehearse at the school, and I would learn more about like the students and things like that. And again, there's just not that representation. There's just
Mhm.
not those opportunities.
Opportunity.
And unfortunately in Hollywood, we need things to be efficient and to run smoothly and like it's like go kind of situation. And we don't have the time to like, oh, if we have to hire a deaf actor, that means we got to get an interpreter, and we got to like, and things are going to be slower moving because the director has to like, can't just have any shorthand with them, that kind of thing. We don't give them the resources that they need to do the things. And we
No.
think it's easier to just a person
To do what you're used to doing. It's a thing that's comfortable. To me, it's easier to communicate with someone who can hear and speak and communicate exactly the way I can. So, of course, that's what I lean toward. I'm being a director. I'm not being Shannon.
Yeah.
And then therefore, that closes the door to a wide group of incredibly talented, capable, like high integrity artists that we are just never going to get eyes on until we start opening the doors and creating opportunities for these different voices.
Yeah. So to say he's a first time actor, well, he's 8 or 9
He's
or whatever.
8.
So like, of course, like it's his first time.
Sure.
But also like what opportunities were there for him? What opportunities are going to be delivered afterwards? And like, how hard did we make it for him?
Mhm.
Like there's double-edged not double-edged sword, but it's a whole lot of different factors there of why this is his first time acting.
Yeah,
Like,
you're
did he
right.
want to do it before? Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. Maybe this was the bug that he needed, and he
Yeah.
wouldn't have gotten this opportunity if it wasn't for the fact that Craig Mazin gave that idea to
Twitter.
Neil Druckmann.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that he did.
Yeah.
As much as it is kind of like, well, fuck you, Craig, for deciding
Yeah.
that like he needed more things for us to feel
Right.
sad about and
Right.
make me cry about, but like also like if this is an opportunity to give someone else that representation and good representation.
Yeah.
People have been talking about how the fact that like he's not defined by his deafness.
Mhm.
He's just Sam,
Mhm.
and there's no plot point about the whole thing,
Yeah.
and I think that's, again, good representation. We don't want to be, right? I say we because as an Asian, half Asian American, like, or mixed race person, like, we talk about that kind of representation as well as we don't
Mhm.
want to be represented as Asian American. We just want to be
Yeah.
represented as normal
Yeah.
people, like Americans that have, and even in Last of Us Part 2, we get an Asian American that's just, there's nothing, he's just Jesse,
Right.
It's
Right.
not, and this
He's
guy
not the Asian
is
American
just Sam. It's
character.
like, oh yeah, this is the deaf character, It's like
Nick Offerman played the gay character.
Yeah,
like
no.
these are just they're just human
it's
beings
just Bill,
that
it's just Sam, it's just Frank.
Woo!
Yeah.
All right.
Great. But he dies. So
Yeah, but he's dead though. But he dies because he's left-handed.
but the difference here is that Ellie tries to
Mhm.
save him. Because in the game we didn't know. We didn't know what happened to Sam. Well, we knew what happened to Sam,
Right.
but they didn't know what happened to Sam, and she didn't get an opportunity. It's still, she still feels the same way. Like, what if I could have,
Mhm.
and that's what she feels at the very end. That's why she's like, which way is west? Because she's like, I can't let this happen to another person that I care about. I could have saved him. Like, if there's something in me that could have stopped this from happening
Mhm.
to my friend, I need to get there as fast as possible. And that's it. So it hits her in a way that she has more drive, and yes, she's hurt, and now she has a promise to keep.
Yeah. I really like that in terms of motivating her to what we know is the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in the game it didn't feel that apparent to me. I actually didn't think about it until just now that she might have realized that Sam died by being bitten. Also, Tess was bitten, and now she has this sense of duty. Because I know I in theory have the ability to save these people, and now I have to do that for Tess, for Sam. Whereas in the game, it wasn't as apparent to me. We just knew that Ellie was able to save people, and as a young girl, like, she felt that purpose. But now I really feel that emotional driving factor of why she wants to get to the Fireflies in the West.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was a good
Yeah.
adjustment.
And the scene, not to, I guess, just roll over it quickly or whatever, the scene that happens with Henry at the end, with him having to do the unthinkable, and then how he can't live with himself. I mean, this happens almost beat for beat as with the
Trigger
game.
warnings
So
coming.
you kind of knew that it was going to happen if you've played the game, and it happens exactly the same way. This is the point where I'm like, I wish we had more time with them.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, as much as I was affected, even when I know it's coming, like, it is hurting me. I'm like tearing up, but I didn't maybe cry as much as I did with the Bill and Frank thing, because that was something that was so new. This is just something getting delivered to me. And I was like, well, I felt like we didn't have any time with them.
Mm-hmm.
It's still effective for anyone who probably hasn't played the game, in the sense that, like, if you haven't seen this, like, that decision of his to put the gun to his temple and pull the trigger, just because everything that he fought for, he just went through hell. He just went through this entire city. He betrayed people. He
did bad things that he feels guilty about, and then
or for this kid, that he thought was the light that was going to, like, be all worth it, you
Mhm.
know? And not only that, not only did he fail, but he also had to be the one that shot him.
Mhm. Which is so heartbreaking, especially not only because we know that he's never killed anyone, and then the first person you have to kill is the thing that you love more than anything, probably even yourself, in this
Mhm.
entire world. And the just how much information Henry was processing at that time. They fly out of the room. Bella Ramsey is like screaming for Joel's help. You see what's happening, but like he probably didn't want to comprehend it. Joel tries to help. He doesn't want Joel's interference. He aims the gun at Joel before he can aim it at his like turning brother. And I just can't imagine. I feel like it all happened so fast and then it sunk. Like we got to spend that moment with Henry and that panic and that fear and that sadness and the angst, like the pure agony on his face after his like panic brain turns off and he sits with the consequence of that action.
And you have to
Hurt.
And
me.
you have to imagine the way that we do as like human beings. Like Joel's going through his head, like, what do I say to this person? You know, like, and Joel's the kind of person that, as you said, justifies things. Like he's like, no, like you had to do what you had to do, that kind of thing. But like, just like Kathleen, I know what you're gonna say.
Mm-hmm.
Henry probably knows that too, and he goes through it all in like an instant.
Mhm.
He's like, you're gonna say this, I'm gonna say that. Like we understand how this goes, and he's like, he already knows I can't live with this.
Do you think Joel clocks that?
Oh yeah. Like as you probably would, I don't think he's asking for the gun because Henry could do anything at that moment,
Right.
is an erratic or whatever. I think he knows what's
Yeah.
probably about to happen, you know, because he knows maybe how he would feel if this
Mhm.
was Ellie, if this was
I
his
I even
daughter.
imagine him thinking like probably reliving what he went through when Sarah
With Sarah,
died.
yeah. This is definitely like, what did Tommy have to say to Joel to back him off that cliff?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a hard thing to understand and to justify. Like, should Henry have done this? Should he have not? You know, like what? You know, there's a whole lot of things. Like, what do you live? Can you live for? Like that kind of stuff. You can justify a whole bunch of stuff, and you can tell someone that's in the States like to keep going and do whatever you had to do, what you had to do. But that's not. It's like not enough. Like he's already done so much. We live in a harsh like world in the terms of this show.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it ends the way that it ends.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just tough to handle. It's tough to swallow.
I really like that we get to see Ellie experience that
mhm.
Henry's death because Sam is already bad enough, but your fear brain probably protects her in a way that this is an infected trying to bite her. She is afraid in some capacity, but essentially her friend has been murdered
Mhm.
almost twice, considering he's infected and then is shot. And then she has to watch someone make the choice to stop living. And I love the way that like Bella Ramsey's little like cry, like vocal, that honestly, like that's something that made me like, it squeezed my heart. I really felt in that moment that I was like there experiencing those emotions with them because I love the way that she saw that happen and delivered
Yeah.
that performance.
And I'm such an idiot for like not noticing the first time I watched, but like the fact that like Sam was just sitting on the bed, like looking at the sun, you know, because as a infected, like there's, I guess, stimuli that like you're kind of drawn to or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why is he doing that? Like, what is like, this is weird. Cause in the game, I'm also like comparing it to where she has to go get him for breakfast and she finds
Yeah.
him and like does that thing. And like, it happens the same way in the game. And I just didn't think about it until I like listened to the podcast. I was like, he can't hear her because he's deaf. And he's like not. And so she
Oh.
says, hey, and she has to walk over and physically, and, and I just like, why I didn't piece that together. And like the fact that like Craig Mazin talks and Neil Druckmann say like, oh, that just proves to us and to him that like, no matter even if you become a monster, you're still there. I don't necessarily think that I agree with that statement, but I think it is just even more just like sad there that was the thing that kind of like hurt me.
Yeah.
The fact that like maybe they're right, maybe he was still there,
Do you
that there
think
was at least a part of him that was kind of still living on in the way that like he was engaging with his world visually,
Mhm.
and it wasn't until like he was presented with something else that he snapped into a different mode.
Right.
I don't know. There's not much really for me to say there, but I didn't notice it. I didn't really register with me at first, and that just made it even more tragic. When you forget that, like, yeah, he can't hear.
Well, I wondered the first time I watched it, I was like, as soon as Ellie wakes up, I was like, he has to be turned already.
Yeah.
He has to be turned. I know that as someone that's played the game.
Yeah.
And I was wondering why, if he turned in the middle of the night, even if he turned like an hour or so ago, if I'm looking at you, I would see you. And if I'm turning and I'm deaf, like there's not much else pulling me away from why didn't Sam just attack Ellie when he initially turned? And part of me wonders if he had the forethought
To turn away,
to not
maybe?
have her in his eye line.
Yeah.
Or if it was fear and like, I don't want her to see me like this. If there's just something that turned him away and that was basically what saved her. Because otherwise, if there's any part of, we know that fungus is drawn to infecting more. So if Ellie was anywhere in his line of sight when he turned, there's no reason that she wouldn't have been attacked earlier.
Well, there's also the fact that, as we've learned with Tess, the fungus recognizes the fungus, So, like, it wouldn't recognize without something in its eye line that something else is there. It knows what it is, and if the fungus is still growing inside of Ellie in a certain capacity, then that's what it senses, and it doesn't really register as like a different kind of thing, And again, as you said with him, I didn't think about that, but like that's probably true. Like as he's like turning, like pulling away and turning away and trying not to put her in danger. It's hard to think about because I don't want Sam to be gone. He was such a light to Ellie and like could have been so much more for Ellie, and for Joel and for Henry, and there's a part of you that wants all four of them to make it to Wyoming. It just doesn't happen that way. And this is the first tragedy, not the first tragedy. This is the thing, as you said, that really, I think, affects both of them. Not only Joel is seeing a change in Ellie, he's seeing how she's affected by this and how she's more determined than ever, and he sees what she wrote, I'm sorry, on his little magic pad. And I think there's a whole lot of things that he's reckoning with, We talked about how they were more of a team. It was more of an us situation, and where he also was like allowing them to maybe be a part of the journey, He could have seen what these two kids were doing and like what it meant, and he could have seen the purpose of like why he was here and why he needed to be with Ellie, and then he just like got that ripped away from him as well. There's a whole lot going on there. I don't know exactly what he's thinking.
Yeah.
But there's definitely like a turning point for both of them here, and I think this is the point where Joel also is fully on board with whatever the journey is with Ellie,
Yeah.
you know, and he's fully on board with being there with Ellie. There's going to be a little bit more pushback. I know we're going to get to that later. I think we'll talk about that here in a second in terms of like the next episode, but
I even
he's seeing it and he's reckoning with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I even like that they took the time, because of course they're going to in this circumstance, but we know that Joel's killed a bunch of people and doesn't strike me as the type to do the burying. I think we listened to this on the podcast, but the fact that they take the time to bury Henry and Sam, there's a part of me that knows this is for Ellie's sake, but there's also a part of me that knows that there's a part of Joel that's doing this to respect them too. And if not fully Henry, definitely Sam. And then out of respect for that relationship, like also Henry. Sam was just such a, like you said, like just a special light that brought out even more in Ellie, who I think is Joel's primary light. And you can't see all of that and not respect the dead. And I really love that they take the time to bury these two people. And whatever Pedro Pascal was thinking, after we get to see that Ellie wrote "I'm sorry" and just leaves West, I could have spent like a couple more seconds just staring at whatever is going through his head. There's weight there, there's awe, there's duty. I think there's a fear of paternal instinct. Like there's just so much happening in the weight of seeing how Ellie is processing all of this, that again, Pedro Pascal, just take all of my money and be in everything, because he's really phenomenal at just like the intensity on his face. Got me also.
Yeah. Well, great. Anything else to say about this episode before we move on?
Just some light things. I like that we got to see Ellie shiv some infected, because as a game player, I like to shiv the infected. So I like that we are just reminding people that, you know, Ellie's thing in the game is knifing.
Sure.
And she got to do some knifing. The little comics, Easter egg, the fact that you spend time like trying to find these comics for Ellie in the game.
Yeah.
Like, of course she has some. And of course Sam would then also have some.
What did you think about the Endure and Survive, the title of the episode, as well as, I guess, the ongoing theme, you know, in terms of they keep bringing it back?
The reason I like it is because I don't believe it.
So you're like on the Joel and Henry camp of
it's
kind of redundant and
no, I think that Endure and Survive is like, sounds like a Joel motto. How are you getting through life? I'm getting through life. I'm doing what I have to do to survive, as opposed to something more like optimistic or hopeful or loving. You're not just enduring and surviving. Like you could be creating and building, or
well, that's what I'm saying.
I
think that maybe it depends on how you like define endure and survive. But I think that goes back to our conversation earlier, where it's like that isn't Joel's motto. He's not an endure and survive kind of person. I think Tommy is. I think that is what this comic is, and I think that's the antithesis of who Joel is and who he's going to become. You know, and hopefully going to become is what we want. We're seeing that arc. Like this is the thing that he's learning.
Yeah.
You know, we see childish things and we see things where like, yeah, that's stupid. You know, and then again, it goes back to that hug, like with sometimes the children and what they're into, like teaches us more about who we should be as humanity, than what we believe as adults in our jaded state. You know,
we lose
and how we joke about it and whatever. It's like the things that they feel so much. This means a lot to Ellie and to Sam, because they haven't had a lot of pop culture. You know, they haven't had a lot of things like teaching them. It's like when we watch movies for the first time, or we get these little bits of culture these stories that we engage with for the first time, we love it so much because this is the first time like seeing these themes and seeing these tropes, you know, and they mean a lot to us as kids, and they mean a lot to us. They kind of inform who we are as adults. Joel and Henry, this is the thing that they they've been jaded. They've seen it all before. It's like, oh yeah, this is kind of a stupid little thing that people say, but it doesn't really
Yeah.
mean anything to them,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that's important, that like it might be the thing that is something that should be part of the
Mhm.
core. It's like you're here, like what Joel has been doing. Yes, he's been surviving. I don't know that he's been enduring, you know? He's
Yeah.
been broken,
Mhm.
you know, and that brokenness has caused calluses. That's enduring in a different way. It's a
Mhm.
definition that I think it's really hard. You know, I
Mhm.
don't know that he's been actively enduring. You know what I'm saying? Um, and I think that's just important to
Mhm.
point out. The other thing that I forgot about is that Henry, he decides not to tell Sam that they're going to Wyoming until the next day, and then he just offhandedly says, you know, new day, new start. And that's essentially what we get, you know, with
Mhm.
Ellie and Joel's a new day, new start. And I think it's sad that Henry and Sam didn't get that, but what he said still rang true for these two people, you know, that he got to be a part of their lives, you know,
Mhm.
and it is true. It is a new day, a new start, not in the way that we wanted, not in the way that we expected, definitely not in the way that Ellie would have ever thought of, you
Mhm.
know, but she is clearly, this is a new start for her.
Mhm.
And that's what we're going on to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's episode 5. Endure and survive. You want to talk about next week's episode? Full spoilers for anything else next week in the game. I don't know as much is going to be, but like if you're here and you're waiting for you want to listen to the rest of the podcast, skip to a time code that I'll put in the show notes. Otherwise, if you don't want to be spoiled by anything in the game, for the rest of the episodes or even next week's episode, I would leave now just because we're gonna be open to that if that happens. So yeah, spoilers now. Be gone.
Yeah, I don't know. In regards to next week's episode, we already kind of touched on like what we think Tommy's doing.
We're gonna get a little more Wyoming than we did in the first
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
You know, looks
Um
like I can't remember her name. I want to say Martha, but I don't think that's it.
Marlene?
No.
Oh.
It looks like
Mm.
Tommy's wife has it changed casting in a way. I can't wait to
Martha.
see. I can't wait to see how that happens. I'm getting things confused also with like the Walking Dead character. But anyway, it's a whole other
Yeah, we're not
thing.
jumping into that.
So yeah, so we're gonna meet Tommy. We're gonna meet his wife.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we're gonna meet his new life. And we've talked about how that's probably going to affect Joel and whatever. I can't wait to see how that is. But it also looks like we're going to blow right past it, and we're going to get past to where Joel and Ellie find themselves at the base of the Firefly camp, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe running from and maybe getting hurt from. I think Joel's going to get hurt at the end of the episode. And then the next episode after that, so that's going to be 6. I think 7's going to be
Riley.
I
do too.
Yeah.
I always thought episode 7 was going to be Riley.
Yeah. I think it has to be. And that 8 would be David, and then 9
Right.
would be like at the hospital.
Yeah.
So I think we're getting to the end. We've hit the midpoint, as it were, you know, in this episode.
Yeah, we're through it.
I kind of wish, again, we had a little bit more time with Henry and Sam in episode 4 probably, and then episode 5. And I think it didn't impact me as much because we didn't get as much time with them as we did in the game. You know, I'm glad it happened, and I'm sad to say that I don't know that we're gonna get as much as Gabriel Luna as I'm sorry, it's the wrong Luna, Diego Luna. Or did I have it right? I don't know.
We'll put it in the show notes.
We're not getting much as Tommy's also we want, but also we might get a little bit more than we did in the game as well. So
I just think that having one episode essentially like per character. Like I know we met Tess in episode 1, but like 2 was Tess. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
3 is Bill and Frank.
Well, the next one is called Kin.
So you just said, I wish we would have gotten more time with Sam and Henry. I feel like we got more time with them in the game. And I would agree, yes. And also, yes, I want more of Sam and Henry because the actors did a wonderful job like building those characters and those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said earlier, The Last of Us does such a good job, the TV show does such a good job at ingratiating you to these characters so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Like in just an hour, I honestly felt more connected to this Sam and Henry than I did in the video game, and would argue that the reason the video game ending of their characters was so impactful was because I didn't know it was coming.
Yeah.
Versus if I was someone that hadn't played the games and was just watching this episode, I still think I would have been like, oh my God, like it would have rocked me.
I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's still something to be said about the fact that, like, even though I know Sarah's gonna die at the beginning of the game and the show, like every time I still like cry, you know, even though I know what happens.
It gets
so
you.
like I played the games and watched you play the games, like Sam and Henry like hurt me every time.
Yeah.
You know, so like in this medium, I think there's something to be said about the fact that like if you're not going to, it is one thing to just like represent it the same way. And yeah, it hurts a lot of people, but I think we could have maybe gotten a little more time, because I think what impacts you the most is that you do have to spend time with them.
Yes.
And it is another duo that you get, just like Joel and Ellie, like that you're like, oh, another person with a kid. Like this other like dynamic that you're getting, and you're seeing like how they work, because they're brothers, you know. They're not the same as Joel and Ellie, you know, but
and that's why 4 is such a bummer.
But they are what we want Joel and Ellie to be in essence, you know?
Yeah. I almost wonder if it would have been cool to spend time in episode 4 with like half Kathleen and Perry and half Henry and Sam, to kind of like ingratiate Sam and Henry to us, and then spend all of episode 5 with Sam, Henry, Joel, and Ellie.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to like just keep rehashing episode 4 and 5. Like I think we said what we said about it, and I think that is what it is. But like I want to move on to like 6. We're in spoilers of 6, and I think like I agree. It's just it is what it is, and they wrote it how they wrote it. I'm not gonna. It's, you know. Oh, we already talked about it. I think I think it's fine. But we're moving. I think the train is just rolling. I think it's just the way that the show is happening. Other people are saying how hard, like they're moving pretty quickly through all these episodes, and I agree. Like we're only getting 9 episodes, and like we're already like going through. Now we have only 4 to get through. Dang, like a whole lot of story. You know, we have like Wyoming. We have another city, and I can't remember what it was, where not the hospital, the university was. It wasn't Colorado or something. Is anyway, and then we get Joel being hurt, and then we get the Riley stuff, the kind of prequel things, and then we have everything with David, and then we have them finally getting to the Fireflies. There's a whole lot of story left to do. I don't know how, like the train is just rolling, and you know, it's just, yeah, could we have had more time? Probably, but also, you know, it is what it is. We got to roll through it, you know. They're still telling compelling stories, and you know, I've been wanting Tommy to get back into the game ever since we had him in the first episode, you know, because I felt like he was really good. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Heck yeah.
Is there anything else you're looking forward to or thinking about when it comes to the next couple of episodes or next week?
Honestly, not next week a whole lot. I'm just ready to take the ride. I'm really anticipating episode 7.
Riley.
What I think is going to be episode 7.
Yeah, you've been looking forward to that since whatever.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't want to talk about the fact that like we're going to get next week, if what I believe is going to happen, we're going to get the I'm not your dad moment. You know, that's the big moment. That's the
Oh,
thing. Like
I thought we kind of already got that.
no,
In this episode.
You're misremembering wrong. Like that's an offhanded, like, yeah, no, he's not my dad. That's just a relationship.
Yeah.
No, when he says specifically to Ellie, like, no, you're right. I'm not your dad, and you're sure as hell not my daughter.
Oh,
You don't remember that?
I do remember that, but I thought
Apparently, you didn't care about that as much as everyone else did on the internet, because that's an important moment.
I care about it, but I didn't see them bringing that in so close to the end of the season, because as I've been like fighting for on this podcast, Joel is thawing a lot quicker in the TV show than he does in the game. And
Well, that's
I
what-
thought,
that's
hold on
what
one
you're
second.
saying.
So
I don't agree.
I thought that with like when she says, I'm not family, and he says, no, you're cargo in episode 4. And
You
then
thought that was that moment?
and then here also says like, oh, you're this, and he goes, I'm not her dad. She's not like, he's not my father. I don't see them having another big moment after what they just went through in the terms of the TV show. I just feel like that would be backpedaling, because it feels like we just had this really intimate moment where we watched Ellie bury a child and Joel watch a child bury a child and head off. And I just imagined them like moving forward as a unit, because there is so much more we have to get through with Joel getting hurt and then Riley and then David. It's like, where do you put in the idea that in an hour he's not her dad, and then they like come together
I don't know
again?
why you think that would be backpedaling, because I feel like that is the whole point of, like, that's the crux of their relationship, is that's what happens there. That's the thing that they're dealing with, that they don't ever fully come back from. I think Joel, because what happens in the next episode, which if it happens like it happened in the game, you know, he tries to pawn off Ellie. She recognizes that Joel, as much as she thought that they were getting close, as much as you thought that he was thawing, he doesn't. He's not thawing. He's still like, nope, I can still pawn you off. Like, I'm not in charge of her. Like, you need to take her. Like, I can't do this like anymore. And she's like, fuck. Like, I thought it was with Joel. I thought we were part of a team. I thought, like, it's not backpedaling. It's just a reshifting of things. It's definitely like where the things that we thought were happening is like not true as it happens in real relationships. It's like what you thought was happening is not happening, you know? Like, oh, you thought we were, you thought I was like flirting with you, and like, oh, no, that's not what was happening. It's like, no, like it's like almost like a gaslighting situation. Ellie's going to feel very hurt and betrayed and all those things. I think it's a very important part of the game and their relationship. It's a moment where they both decide, you know, they actually tell each other what's going on through their heads, like the feelings that they're having, you know? It's a fight or flight response. Joel being very much, I think we'll talk about it more because it's going to happen. Like Joel's like, he says this out of anger and out of like whatever is going on through his head. Like, again, that point where you're like, oh, does he believe that she's cargo? Like, does he actually really believe that? Like, I don't know. But like, yeah, for her to finally be like, I thought we were this, you know, and like, you know, and for her to be like, listen, I'm not Sarah. I'm not this. Like, you know, I can't be what you thought I was. Like, I'm sorry, you know, and for him to throw that back in her face, that's a very important part of the relationship, especially when he goes on to be hurt and she still takes care of him and like basically brings him back to life. You know, like, I don't think that's backtracking at all. I think that's following in terms of like what the game was as well. And also, I think that you think he's thawing now. Like, yeah, he's like, we disagreed on that too. Like, he's kind of, he's being more upfront with her and kind of coming around to her side, but it's not the same. You know, I don't think he's still not fully there. He's not fully embraced who he is to her.
Joel is a nicer, warmer person than you do.
I think you want to do that with like a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think you want to do that with me. I think you want to do that with like with anything that you see, especially because you know who Joel becomes. Like you're informing who he becomes with like who he is now, and you're trying to like look for that there. But you have to recognize like he's not become that yet. He's not become like the figure. Like, I think even at this point in the game, you were like, you might have not like seen that or like whatever. Like, you want to recognize certain things, and again, that's where like our conversations with like what's a bad guy, what's a good guy, you
Mhm.
know, like there is definitely like a part of you that wants to see something of him. You want to see the Joel that you recognize Joel could be or could
Yeah,
become or
like I want to
whatever.
see the best in Joel
But I think it's important.
because it's there.
But I think it's important to look at like what is he actually showing you? Like who is he actually being? You know?
Mhm.
And I think that is again it's not different from who you want to see. Like it's
Mhm.
not a I want to say it's like not a direct argument to like you like yeah,
Right.
you want to see like who Joel is and like you do see the best in Joel and do whatever. And I think that's why it's such a gut punch when he says, I'm not.
Mhm.
I'm not this, you know,
Mhm.
because that is the thing, which is why I was surprised you didn't want to talk about it, because I think that's a big major element of for him to finally say what he's been feeling and say what he's been thinking, you
Mhm.
know, this whole time, and to like
Mhm.
just put out there like you're not my daughter, you know.
Mhm.
He doesn't mention Sarah. Like it's Ellie that has to bring up Sarah.
Right.
You know, he like Ellie doesn't even know
Because this
who
will be the
Ellie
episode that
doesn't
she
know
finds
who
out about Sarah.
and Ellie, yeah, doesn't know who Sarah is,
Mhm.
you know? And so that is like, it has to come out.
Mhm.
It has to, like, you kind of have to bring that to the forefront in order to, like, overcome it, in
Mhm.
essence, you know? And I think that's an important part of the relationship. And I don't think it makes you, like, necessarily wrong, you know? I'm not saying, like, it's a direct contradiction of what you're saying that Joel is, but I think it is also, like, reinforcing that Joel isn't like who like you want to think. I think that gun
Mhm.
punch is supposed to be there. It's like what
Mhm.
you want Joel to be is not who he is.
Mhm.
What Ellie wants Joel to be is not who he is. What Joel wants Ellie to be is not who she is. You know, like
Mhm.
we all want certain things out of people, and like sometimes we have to recognize that we can't always have it, and they can't always be what we want them to be.
Mhm.
You know, and we can't just like look at them and just because we want people to be the best versions of themselves, they not always are, you know,
Mhm.
and they fail us and they disappoint us, you know, and they're going to, and you can decide to still be a part of that or you cannot. I think that's
Mhm.
an important part of like what the game and the show wants to show us as well. And I think that's going to come to a forefront, you know?
Mhm.
So you're just saying, you know,
I'm just agreeing.
you can argue with me if you want to.
No,
You
I
can,
mean, it's all right. I'm good. You said that you think it's important, and it probably is. I didn't think about it that way. I just thought we would be moving along in a different way. I thought that those feelings would come out in a different way, but I guess it would make sense for them to come out just exactly the way they would in the game. So I'm agreeing.
yeah, sure. Well, back to the fuck counter, just like wrap that up in the conclusion.
2.
And maybe I'll edit to say we got 2. That's it. Maybe we'll get more. I don't know. And probably a fuck thrown at Joel once or twice.
One can only hope.
As we mentioned. But yeah. I hope you enjoyed our conversation this week better than you did last week or anything like that. Talking to you.
Oh, I did. I thought you were
Shannon,
talking.
she's checked out. She doesn't want to talk to me anymore because I've apparently shown her that people are evil and not the good people that she wants to recognize.
I'm like, maybe I should start
world.
just realizing what people put in front of me and stop looking for the best
I'm a
in
bad
people.
person. Maybe you should stop doing this podcast with me,
Maybe.
Shannon.
Hey, full circle. I told you guys at the beginning, this is the last podcast we're doing. No.
Whoa.
When you're in the darkness, look for the light. That's just, honestly though, like that's why it's fun to talk to you, is because I feel like you rarely agree with me, and not in a negative way. We just see things from 2 very different perspectives, even though we're confronted with the same input. We're both looking at Joel. We're both watching the same TV show. We both played the games the same way. And it just shows like, yeah, maybe I have more of the Frank or Tess qualities, and maybe you do have more of the Joel qualities. And therefore, we look at things from different perspectives. But that's what makes interesting conversations for me, is like, I don't feel like you just argued with me or shut me down. You just made me think of something in a way that I hadn't thought of it. because I do want to move forward.
Right. And
I want
you shut down.
And also, I don't want to do this podcast anymore because my feelings are hurt. No, but actually, it's like, if I'm speaking to what I want, it is the fact that I want what Joel just saw Ellie go through to mean something to him. I so badly want him to be affected by this person because you already know he is.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that he says and all the walls he puts up are because he's already been affected and he's trying to protect himself from like experiencing future trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And we just want to see him thaw. So of course I'm pushing for like maybe this murder-suicide of an 8-year-old and like the friendliest people we've met so far finally is the thing that makes Joel fucking admit that he has feelings, warm feeling.
Just don't rush the journey, you know?
But I want it now!
Sometimes you gotta, and you can't, and other people need to also be a part of that and feel it and recognize it. You know, maybe not everyone is as on board with Joel as you are, you know, and
I'm
that's
very
why you're
team
here
Joel.
You're team Joel and other people are team, I don't know.
No, but again, so like you are probably right. And it didn't occur to me that it's like, yeah, I'm skipping that beat in the game because I have written in that note the just the quickness of them saying, you're not my dad, or he's not my dad, she's not my daughter, had major like, no, I don't like him energy. Like when Castle and Beckett are like, no, we don't have anything. It's like, okay, but you do.
Yeah.
But you do feel that way.
Yeah.
And
but
it's
eventually
like,
they're gonna
me.
have to talk about it.
I
you
know.
They're gonna have to.
And you're right. And I
to,
didn't think about that, which is why I'm admitting that again, you opened my eyes to the possibility of like, yeah, you're right. These people have to get there.
So for those who are listening and don't watch the actual shows that I watch with her and like are not present, but like often when there's a will they, won't they kind of like thing that's happening in shows, she's always just like, kiss. So that's what she wants. She wants them to just like talk about their things and get through it and just like admit the things that they want. And this is exactly what Joel and Ellie are going through. This is the same thing. It's just the kiss, but it's not a romantic thing. It's just you want them to kiss in a father daughter
and not in that way either. This is not that type of video.
Not physically kiss. We know what we're talking about. We all are
all on board. But yes, it's like you're right. I want that, but I can't. You don't want to cheapen. The reason this is so compelling is because it's not just given to me on a plate.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If again, I keep referencing Castle because I'm watching Castle now for the first time. But like, if Castle and Beckett kiss in season 1, what do I do for the remaining 7 seasons?
Yeah.
Do I just watch them have a happy relationship or like fight sometimes? That's boring. What's exciting is when you can see into people that they're feeling something that even they haven't reckoned with yet. But I want it. So yes, I'm excited to be mad and have feelings next week when Joel tells Ellie that she's not his daughter and I want to fight him.
Ooh, we're all gonna cry. If you also want Joel and Ellie to kiss metaphorically, you can email us at codependentcontent@gmail.com. You can follow us on any of the socials that we've put in the descriptions below. Please follow us, give us some love on TikTok, which is where we already get so much love right now. Again, you can listen to this anywhere you get podcasts, but if you happen to be listening on Spotify, you can also engage with the polls.
Let me know if you think Joel's a bad guy.
And we'll figure out what those are going to be. So go and do that. You can also watch this if you prefer watching on YouTube or on Spotify. And yeah, and we do try to record this live. We're not recording live this week since the schedule was already screwed up and stuff. And I was traveling and we didn't know when we were going to do it. And just forget about it. But like we do have a Discord channel where you can find in the description below. And we do encourage just coming in, just joining our little community of no good people.
Of varying shades of good and bad people who do good and bad things.
Mischievous vagabonds of artists and things like that. It's a community we're trying to build, and also where we try and go live every week. And you don't have to be just a podcast person or to engage. If you're just looking for a community, hopefully we can build that as well. But yeah.
Endure, survive. Join us on Discord.
Always got to try and do some sort of motto. I don't know that that's it.
I'll find it one day.
But it ends the way that it ends, I guess.
Oh, wow.